Hey guys, so this piece was inspired by a monochrome watercolor piece I created a couple of years ago where I used I want to say it was the dark purple or the black purple from this Boku Undo Sumiask Gansai set, and I used a color, pink lead to draw it. But I'm not recording this as a tutorial today. I'm going to link that in the description below. It's a really easy process. You just use one color and you increase the amount of water or you decrease the amount of water, kind of depending on what you want to achieve. And for today's piece, I'm going to be using the yellow-black color, which is really more like an olive green. But what I wanted to do today is just kind of talk to you guys, just kind of chat with you guys. This is something I haven't really been able to do in a long time, just kind of due to the nature of how my videos have evolved, I guess I want to say. Everything is very time-lapsed, everything is done in shorter time constraints, and there isn't really just a lot of chance to chit-chat in these kinds of videos. So let's think about this as kind of just a getting to know you sort of video. So, hi, I'm Becca. I'm a comic artist. I've been making comics for about 20 years. I started way back when I was 13, and I've been making comics ever since. I have 2 degrees in art. I have a BA in digital media from UNO. I grew up in Louisiana. And I have a MFA in sequential art from SCAD. So that's a Master's of Fine Art in Comics. And as you guys can probably tell, I'm pretty passionate about comics. I don't necessarily talk about it too much on the channel at this point in time. I have a lot of comic craft videos, a lot of zine videos, but I don't talk about other people's comics. I don't review other people's comics. I don't really like to publicly dissect other people's work. I feel like there's a lot of criticism, and I feel like a lot of people who maybe don't know what they're talking about really like to chew up other people's work, so I generally tend to avoid doing that just because I think it sets a bad precedent, and I think we have enough gatekeeping in comics. For me, I want comics to be a field that anyone can feel confident making comics, maybe not professionally, but for fun to share on the internet. And I feel like getting overly analytical and overly critical, not necessarily like analyzing themes, but like overly criticizing other people's art, other people's abilities, I feel like that really scares a lot of people out of comics, and that's something that I want to help combat. And I also think a lot of the art communities really dissuade people from even drawing for fun, and that's not something that I agree with, and that's something I try to actively discourage in the communities that I participate in and the communities that I have helped formed. So that's just like a vibe that I've always tried to avoid here on this channel. I do feel like good materials will help you make better art because you don't have to fight them so much, but I also spend a lot of time reviewing very inexpensive things, very accessible things, because I also, having grown up in rural Louisiana, I also understand how hard it can be to find good things, to find good art supplies, and then how very cost prohibitive they are when you live in these areas that are not artistic hubs or that don't have a lot of cultural diversity. There's a scarcity of supplies. So that's one of the reasons I make a lot of tutorials on using like Crayola, or I review a lot of things from Walmart and Dollar Tree, because I understand that there's kind of a need there that is often not really filled, or it's treated like a joke, or it's treated like it's a one-off challenge and no one ever does this. And I don't really agree with that either. And I'm not saying this to like cast shade on people who do those videos or who do that kind of content. I think that's very amusing content. I think it's very entertaining content. It's often very fun to watch other people's reactions to that. But there's plenty of that kind of content, so I try not to make too much of that since there's plenty of it already and we don't necessarily need more. So really the approach I've taken in the past few years, this channel started in 2016, but I kind of found my feet a couple years ago, especially when I started editing my own videos and doing a lot of voiceover work and then doing a lot of streams. Really the tack I wanted to take is just kind of a nurturing, kind place where people of any age can feel confident starting their own artistic journey, can feel confident starting their own comic journey. There's tutorials for people who are very much just starting out. There's tutorials for people who have some skills and are looking to fill in more of those skills. And maybe there's even a few tutorials for people who already know a lot about what they're doing and they're looking to learn some new techniques. So that's really kind of the area I want to fill, is like the auntie or the kind big sister, encouraging you in your artistic journey, because I feel like we could always use more voices of kindness and more voices of encouragement. And I also feel like there's a lot of adults who would like to draw, who would like to learn how to draw, but there isn't necessarily a lot of content made for them specifically. I mean, there's definitely like Mind of Watercolor, and there's definitely like Frugal Crafter. I don't mean like that, but I mean people who are just learning how to draw as an adult. Maybe that was not something that was taught to them while they were in school, or they weren't allowed to take those classes, or for whatever reason, that was something that they missed out on in that point in time. So that's something I also really try to do here on this channel, is make content for those kind of people and try to do it in kind of a low-key, relaxing way. I'm a very energetic person. I have a lot of energy, and I try to allow that to shine through in how passionate I am about my art, about other people's art, and about good art supplies. But I don't want this to just be me yelling at you guys for 30 minutes about why something sucks or why something's the best thing ever. Even though I can be a very hyperbolic person, I really try to veer away from hyperbolic responses in terms of like art supplies or experiences, just because there is already so much out there. And when we're having those high-key hyperbolic emotions, it can be very difficult for us to examine how we really feel about something, and it can very negatively or very positively color our experiences. So in general, I kind of try to stay away from that here on the channel. So generally, I'm just trying to go for kind of a very chill sort of vibe. So I work for the most part as an artist. I've had all kinds of different jobs. I've done a lot of freelance. I've done a lot of digital freelance. I've worked remotely. I've done a lot of conventions. I've taught a bunch of people how to do conventions. Right now, a lot of my paying work has come from teaching. It was coming from teaching in person, but with COVID kind of throwing all that up in the air, I'm probably going to continue to move a lot of my teaching assets and my teaching techniques online. I mean, I've been doing that in various forms for about a decade now, with the blog and also with this channel. So it's not something that's entirely new to me, but I do want to find new ways to engage people. And for me, very accessible art content is something that is really important. And right now, we are so spoiled for choice. We have so many amazing options here on YouTube. So I do want to thank you guys for spending some of your time here with me, because I know you have a world of options to choose from. And hopefully there's something you're getting from this channel that is fulfilling for you and useful for you, whether it's encouragement, or whether it's trying out new things, or whether it's learning new techniques, or whether it's the live streams where you have a chance to hang out and chat with other artists in a very friendly and positive environment. Hopefully you're getting something from this channel. I know we're a very small channel. I've never really had the growth that I kind of hoped for, and at this point in time I'm actually very okay with that. I'd like to see more views on the videos given the size of my audience, but in general I'm very happy with the number of subscribers that I have. I know it's a very small channel for a lot of people, but it's enough for me. I've seen so many other artists, their lives become so complicated when they became really popular. So in some ways I feel like I dodged a bullet, because I really do value my privacy. And there's a lot of aspects of my life that I'm not necessarily comfortable sharing with the whole world. It's not that I'm ashamed of them. It's just that they're part of my personal life, and I respect the choices that other people in my life are making. And sometimes when you become very popular, your life is no longer your own. So having kind of a smaller community allows me to keep that sort of privacy that I value, and it also allows me to get to know the people who contact me a little bit better, like via Discord or during our chats, during the live streams. I get to know you guys. I get to know your personalities. I get to know what you like. I get to know what kind of stuff you like to draw. And I really like that. I like those interpersonal connections with people. So in many ways, staying kind of small has been a good thing, even though it was very frustrating for me for a while, if I'm being honest, just because it does take so much work to make these kinds of videos. It is something I do very regularly. I have a very regular update schedule, and I share a lot. So at one point, I felt like it was a reflection on me and on my quality and on my ability as an artist. And was a painful thing to deal with, but I've gotten kind of past that, and I'm kind of cool with it now. But it also helps that I had other things come into my life and give me some perspective and give me a chance to get that sort of acknowledgement and encouragement in other ways. So, you know, it's all about finding out what your needs are and finding ways to fill them. And often the internet and social media are not the best ways to fill your needs unless you have a very certain type of personality. And clearly my personality is not that type of personality. So that's okay. I like who I am. I don't necessarily want to change it. So I accept that that is the consequences. That's fine. And I mean that really sincerely. Like, I know that can come across as like, you know, whatever, I guess I don't get what I want. But no, I'm genuinely really good with it, especially because, you know, I'm getting married this year and we're moving this year, and I want to start a private art tutoring business. And I've been having books off and on with different publishers interested, and then maybe not interested, and then interested again. Like, there's so many other things going on in my life that it's better for me if I don't have something that's just hugely all-consuming, especially something that would require as much time and as much interaction as, say, YouTube would, and might also come with many risks. So, like I said, I'm pretty good with that. So, generally, I spend a lot of my non-YouTube time working on 7-inch Kara. So the girl you see here, she's the main character from that comic. We are currently kind of in pre-Kickstarter prep, and gosh, with COVID and my mom getting sick, everything has taken a lot longer than I thought it would. I really thought we were going to be kickstarting in April, and now it's almost May. So, you know, and part of that is on me. I have been very anxious about certain aspects of like reaching out to people and talking to people, because it's gotten to the point where I really hate asking other people for favors, because quite frequently they let me down. So I've just gotten to the point where I don't ask people for favors, and I try not to ask people for help, which is not a healthy relationship. But for where I am emotionally right now, that is the only way I can kind of deal with that disappointment. So Kickstarter actually does require asking people for a lot of help and for a lot of favors. So it's been something I'm kind of struggling with emotionally, and trying to scrounge up the courage and shake down or push down the anxiety and have the confidence to ask people for help. So that's been kind of the challenging part for me. It's never doing the work that's the challenging part. I don't really have a problem putting the time in. It's asking, it's when it comes to getting other people to help me with something that I really struggle with. And I'm very fortunate because Joseph's helped so much with this. He's laid out the book. He's helped me contact people when I just didn't have it in me to ask them for help. So I'm really very fortunate to have a partner in this who is so dedicated to helping me out, even though this isn't necessarily his story. It's my story, and I'm the one who did all the art, but he's still very invested in it, and I'm very fortunate to have someone who's so supportive of that. I know historically female artists do not have that kind of support, so I recognize how fortunate I am with that. But it's definitely like everything's kind of gotten scrunched up into like a weird time period, because we have the Kickstarter, and then we're also trying to move, and then we're also trying to get married. So it's a lot going on, and it really wasn't designed or intended to happen like this. But outside forces and my own procrastination have kind of pushed us into this position, which is not a great position. But so I do comics, like I said, and I do mostly comics for all ages or younger readers. I wouldn't call it fantasy and I wouldn't call it fairy tale, but they're both fantasy and fairy tale inspired. Right now I'm working on a long form comic about a 7-inch tall little girl who comes from a people of 7-inch or tiny people, Lilliputians. And I've explored that a lot in 7-inch Kara, and I've also explored that quite a bit in Lilliputian Living, which is kind of this world building standalone mini-series I also work on that's in like a zine written format. And so that's like the main thing I work on, but I've also done a lot of comics for anthologies, and I've also pitched a lot of comics. So, you know, Kara is not my only thing, but it's often the thing I'm working on the most. And it's kind of a softer, more laid-back, slow-paced comic. My favorite manga, my favorite anime are very chill, sort of laid back, a lot of nature, taking things kind of slow. Maybe like 4 seconds are spent staring at just a beautiful insect, something like that. Like I really like stuff like that. Like I really like Bride's Tale, and I'm enjoying Kino's Journey, and I really love a lot of Chica Umino stuff, like oh snap, Honey and Clover, where it's a lot of it is this protracted bike journey where the main character kind of figures out who he is. I'm also like a really big fan of Yotsuba, as well as Ghibli movies where we have those quieter moments. So I spend a lot of time in my comics trying to pursue those soothing moments, and because for me comics is such an escape, and it's such a reward for myself. So usually in the evenings when I'm done working, I'll read manga on my Kindle in the bathtub. So smart. Actually, it's not my Kindle. I read manga on Kindle on my phone in the bathtub. And that's kind of like my reward for a day's hard work. And it's also kind of reinvesting in myself. So for me, those kind of stories are my favorite kind of stories. And I know not everybody really resonates with that, but that's what I like to do. And that's what I like to make. And when I teach, that's often what I teach, is kind of this more chill approach. And I know the way I'm talking about it makes me sound like I'm a chill person, and I'm not. I'm like a 90 octane person. I'm like always very high key. I've been described as too intense. I'm a person who has a lot of passion and a lot of ADHD. So I think that's why I really like these quieter media. And I think that's also why here on the channel, just in general, I try to strive for like a chiller vibe, because in my own personal life, the way I see myself and living in my own skin is often kind of uncomfortable and kind of too intense and kind of too emotional. So I like to create media and consume media that's kind of the opposite of that. And I think there's probably other people who really need that escape. So I figure if I just keep making it, the people who need it will find it, and hopefully people will tell them about it so they can find it. Unfortunately, this kind of quiet media tends not to get talked about as much as more exciting or more dramatic stuff. Often, in fact, in the US, it tends to be reviewed kind of poorly. Like critics who review for like, I want to say the Oscars, but I'm probably wrong. But they often don't like get Ghibli movies. They don't understand why we're spending like 3 minutes watching somebody, not 3 minutes, like 30 seconds watching somebody's expression crumble. But I get it. And I think people who get it, but it's not something that's necessarily mainstream accepted. It's definitely getting to be more mainstream accepted, but it's not quite there yet. So I guess I'm just ahead of my time. I don't know. But that's the kind of stuff I like to make, and that's the kind of stuff I like to consume. And even like my YouTube viewing is very much that. Like I like Crime Pays, but Botany doesn't, because a lot of it is just like out wandering, enjoying flowers. I also like, I think it's like Steve 1982, his MRE reviews, because he seems very chill, and his reviews are very chill, and they're kind of calming to watch. And it's also neat to see how much you can like cram into an MRE, and how long it can last shelf stable, and how food technology has improved. So that's the kind of stuff, even on YouTube, I like, or I watch like Chinese watercolor videos or a lot of Let's Plays. So even my YouTube viewing is more relaxed and kind of laid back. And I also like to listen to a lot of ASMR when I'm painting or when I'm working, especially if my ADHD is really bad and I'm having a really hard time focusing. It kind of helps me focus and chill out and stay in the moment. So I guess that's kind of what I hope to do here. Like, obviously, I'm not trying to trigger anybody's ASMR response. If I did, I would go to great lengths to record the sounds of the brush on the paper and the sound of pencil on paper, because a lot of people find that really relaxing. But I don't. I like having the TV on while I'm working, or I like watching YouTube while I'm working, or I like talking to Joseph while I'm working, or having Animal Crossing on in the background while I'm working. So that audio generally has to be just kind of tossed and redone. So right now it's like the end of April, and we've all been self-isolating / self-quarantining for the past 5 weeks in Nashville. And I know a lot of people are struggling with it. I see a lot of people breaking quarantine around here in like low-key ways. Like my neighbor keeps having parties, which is kind of a concern. But, you know, I'm not going to rat on him. I just wish he wouldn't do that. Anyway, so like I know a lot of people are struggling. And so I'm used to working at home for the most part. That part doesn't really bother me. But gosh, I miss being able to go out and teach. When COVID kind of started, I had just finished teaching an 8-week class with a bunch of 10-year-old girls, and it was one of my favorite teaching experiences because 10-year-old girls is kind of the demographic that 7-inch Kara is for. Like, that's kind of who I'm writing for. I'm making comics that I wish existed when I was a kid. I'm making comics that are still, I mean, there's definitely better, good kid-lit options now, okay? Especially for girls. There's lots of good options, but I still think what I'm doing is not quite being done. So I think there's still a reason to keep doing it and to keep telling the story, even though it does take a while. But it was just a really good experience getting to actually spend time with the people who I make comics for, and with the people that I sometimes make tutorials for, because some of the tutorials, the drawing tutorials here on this channel, were recorded so I could go and teach those kids that. The class was like an hour each session, so when you're teaching a bunch of 10-year-old little girls and you only have an hour to do it, you really kind of have to pare it down as much as possible, because a lot of time is going to get spent just kind of chit-chatting and getting settled back into the classroom, and then sometimes people are dropped off late, and then sometimes people are picked up early. So you really have to try and get in as much information in an understandable way that is easy for them to pick up as possible. So a lot of the tutorials I've recorded, a lot of the drawing stuff here on the channel, was recorded either prepping for like community ed classes that I taught, or classes that I was teaching at the library, or classes that I was teaching at Plaza, where I don't know the age of my audience. It can really vary. Or for my 10-year-olds. So that's what I miss. Like, and I miss like being able to go out to Fido, which is like a local restaurant / coffee shop. And I miss walking down to the coffee shop to get a coffee just because I want to, and I want to get some fresh air. I've been going for a lot of walks, but I don't like just aimless walking necessarily, unless I'm upset, and then I love aimless walking. But I like going somewhere, doing a thing, and then coming back. And obviously, we can't really do that right now. So that's been kind of a struggle too. And then, of course, I don't want to harp on this too much, but I do think it's important to mention the lost income, the lost work. That is a mounting problem for every artist I know. It's a problem for me, although in many ways I'm fortunate and it's not as pressing a problem as it is for some people who can't even pay their rent right now. But it's definitely something that I'm thinking about, and I'm wondering how my life will look in the next 2 years. There's some things that if we'd already moved to Louisiana, if we were already married, I would be doing that. Like, I would have been offering Skillshare classes, and I would have been offering Zoom classes, because those are things that I'm going to have to re-record a lot of material, and I'm going to have to change my setup. And there's just like a lot of prep work I need to do to make sure that it is a quality product that I'm offering. I can't just repackage YouTube videos necessarily for that. So that's something that if my life were just 6 months moved along, I would be doing that already, but it isn't. And everything, like all the marriage stuff has gotten pushed back, and like we were already not going to have a big wedding, but it's looking like it's going to be a backyard wedding with 10 people, and like that isn't really the wedding I wanted. I would have liked to have friends and family there. I'm 34. We waited so long to get married. It would have been nice to have like a nicer wedding than that. But we're also tired of waiting, and we would like to get married. So we both kind of figure like we can have a nice reception later when things are calmed down, when people's health is not at risk, when it would not be putting people in danger to do something like that, and we can kind of make up for it. So, you know, it's not what I wanted. I was never one of those girls who like just dreamed about her wedding. I dreamed about being married and having a family. So I try to remind myself of that, of like, yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but what you're gaining is worth so much more than that. So it's not really a big sacrifice. But I mean, it's still something that is in my life that, you know, I just kind of wanted to talk about, because this is just kind of like a chatty video where we get to kind of know each other, because I feel like with how I record videos, like I mentioned earlier, I don't talk about myself at all. I don't talk about my life at all. I just talk about exactly what we're working on, which I know is kind of alienating. Like I mentioned earlier, I do value my privacy, and I do, but I miss the connection. I like having a connection with people. I like meeting new people and getting to know new people, and I like them getting to know me, and I like them getting to meet me. Like it needs to be a give and take. It shouldn't just be me catering to the needs of a bunch of people I don't even know, or a bunch of people catering to just my needs and I don't care about them in return. I like it to be, you know, equivalent exchange, I guess. I know that's kind of a very reductive view, but I think in this time where so many people are isolated, they were isolated before COVID, but they're even more isolated now, and where so many of us, especially people who do just YouTube for a living, spend a lot of time alone editing video, alone recording video. I think being able to make that connection is important, and I think that's something, as the internet progresses and social media progresses, we're really going to have to work harder at making connections with one another, because the different algorithms on different sites will keep us from actually seeing the posts of our friends, so we need to go out of our way to make sure we see stuff made by people we care about, rather than just passively waiting for it to come to us. And that's something, like, I'm thinking about that because, like, I follow a lot of popular people on Instagram now, and I used to make it a point not to because I knew it would drown out my friends' posts, but I added some because I like their art, and now I never see art from my friends. And it's not that they're not posting, because they're artists and some of them post every day. It's that Instagram has decided that because 50 likes is not the same as 50,000 likes, the 50,000 likes are clearly what I want to see rather than the 50 likes. But really, I want to see the 50 likes. Those are the people I know. They're the people I care about. I'm just following the other people because I like their art. But I like my friends' art, and I like my friends. So I need to make it a point to, like, make sure I check their profiles and see what they're working on and try to be involved in what they're working on, because, like, we're artists, and that being involved in one another's work and being positive and being encouraging and being invested is a way to show a fellow artist how much you care and how much you care about what they're making, because so much of what we make is a form of communication to other people. And maybe that's why it's so important that I make work that is softer but still has a lot of emotions and still does have there is conflict in the stuff that I make. It's interpersonal conflict for the most part, and it's usually kind of low-key, understated until it boils over. But that's such an important part of my life, and human connections and connecting with other people and connecting with animals and connecting with nature. Those are all things that really mean a lot to me. So that's why I put it in my work, and that's what I want to communicate. That's what I wish had been communicated to me, and that's what I valued when I was younger. My favorite books were like The Chronicles of Narnia and Little House on the Prairie, where a lot of time is just spent in these outside spaces. So maybe that's why 7-inch Kara, and the things I draw around 7-inch Kara are so nature influenced and so involved with nature because that was so important to me. And I want other people to fall in love with it and prioritize it and want that in their life as well. And I guess I feel like that's like using comics to communicate that is a really good way to sell nature to people who might not otherwise think about it. Or they might be outside and they're like, I'm bored, I don't have anything to do. But there's so much you can do when you're outside, like just enjoying the flowers or just enjoying the animals or just looking at a neat blade of grass or admiring how the dew sits on the leaves. So that's kind of what I want to communicate to other people, is to look at those smaller things that we often take for granted and to just spend a moment and see them and imagine them and see where that takes you. So, I mean, we've talked about a lot. This is a 30-minute video. I could have crunched it down more. A lot of my videos are very time-lapse, which I always try to disclose because, believe it or not, when I'm teaching, I get students of all ages who really do think people draw and paint that fast. And then they feel bad about how slow they are. That's another thing I hear a lot. Oh, I'm so slow. I'm so slow at drawing. And it's like, no, you're not. Your favorite artist is time-lapsing what they're doing, and either you don't have enough, because a lot of them are learning at home and they're learning on their own. So they don't have this outside experience. So that's why I try to disclose when I time-lapse my stuff, so people know it's okay not to draw that fast, because that's not as fast as people are drawing. Like this was time-lapsed by about 2. So it's about twice as fast as it was in real life. And I did cut out some things too, mostly just like me focusing the camera and stuff. But it did take a little bit longer to do this because of that. So I do try to disclose it, because one of the things that really makes me very sad is when people who are new to art, who are just starting their journey, are so hard on themselves because they're comparing themselves to what they see on the internet. And I know because I don't have access to a community of artists here in Nashville, believe it or not. I'm fairly isolated too. I know how easy it is to lose perspective when you don't have access to this in real life, in your daily life. You only have internet access, which is a very curated view. So I try to just be very honest. Like I've pointed out in several of my videos that many of us don't share our failures on social media because we use our social media as a portfolio to attract more work. So you want to share your best work. But someone who doesn't understand this, someone who doesn't think about this, someone who might be younger or is from a completely different field, they might assume that every piece you do is always to this level because you're not sharing the failures, you're not sharing all the studies you have to do to get this good, you're only sharing the peaks. So they might assume that your whole life is nothing but those peaks. And while I don't want to share a bunch of my failures, I don't mind talking about it. I don't mind being honest about that, especially if it makes somebody else's artistic journey a little bit easier or a little more tolerable, or it helps them be more patient with themselves and with the art that they're creating. And I mean, it's kind of uncouth to talk about this. Generally, we discourage artists from, dissing their own work. But there's lots of things I don't like about my art. There's lots of things I'm trying to improve with my art. There's lots of new things I'm trying to try, and I'm trying to work it into my daily rotation. There's still lots of room for improvement. I'm very well aware of that. And I'm still trying to improve my art literally every day, doing figure studies and doing facial studies and doing expression studies and painting things that might not seem like they're out of my comfort zone, but I'm trying something new. So, so many of us, even as professionals, are still trying to grow and trying to change. Okay, so we finished painting this. I hope you enjoyed our chat. I hope you enjoyed hanging out, and I hope you enjoyed painting with me if you decided to paint along. Monochrome painting is really very easy, and it's very satisfying when you think about how little you have to put in, how quick it can be, and it can be a great storytelling device. So this is the original monochrome piece over on the right. I'll link that down in the description below if you're looking for a straightforward how to paint monochrome tutorial. There's several other colors in this palette, and I would like to do a monochrome Kara piece with each one of them. So keep an eye out for that. And if you enjoy my art and you'd like to see more of it, I do share art regularly over on Twitter at twitter.com/natosoup and over on my Instagram at instagram.com/natosoup. And if you liked what you heard about 7-inch Kara, you guys can read the first 6 chapters for free at 7inchkara.com. And I have a Kickstarter, as I talked about. I have a Kickstarter we're working on. We're making progress. I have a Kickstarter coming up, and I have a mailing list where I'll let you know when the Kickstarter is live, but I also share behind the scenes process stuff and just talk about art stuff in general, and I'll link that in the description below as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed hanging out and chatting with me, and I hope I'll see you guys again really soon. Bye, guys.